Welcome, everyone, to the Union Federation podcast, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville here on the Fandom Podcast Network. My name is Kevin. I'm going to be your captain. And this week, we've got a really good show. We are discussing the Star Trek Q episodes. This is Union Federation episode 231, and we are discussing the episode Deja Q that came out in 1990, and that was on the season 3. I've got the season 3 Blu-ray right here. Season 3 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And of course, we want to let you guys a reminder that we, of course, are discussing all of the Q episodes from 1987 to 2001. That includes, of course, all the TNG, the Deep Space Nine episode, and of course, the episodes of Voyager. This is the Union Federation podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. And if you're watching our video here on YouTube, check out the QR code. Give us a scan there. It'll take us to our website with all of our other wonderful podcasts here on the Fandom Podcast Network, including Union Federation. Let's introduce our crew here, guys. And we got a good one here tonight. And with me, as always, is the co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, my co-captain, sometimes security officer, always cleaning the P corner. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's going on, buddy?
Hello, Mon Capitan. I was going to flash onto this podcast and live show in the buff, but the censors took away my Q powers, so I'm just here with a Blockbuster Video shirt now.
Oh, thank God. And we're going to have our special guest ambassadors come on here. With me is an old friend of mine, brought me into podcasting. I call him my nerdy little brother. Bring on Mr. Robert Bapps. How are you, Robert? How are you?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Kyle, that's the best t-shirt. That's an awesome t-shirt. I love it. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this episode.
All right, we got some fun conversation. And with us this week, again, returning way over from I guess some other dimension with a police booth and stuff. Let's please welcome Mr. Gary Akers. What's going on, buddy?
Yes, sir. It's good to be with you guys again. I'm glad I could take time off from cleaning up the holodeck buffers to join the three of you. I know it's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it.
Well, guys, it's worse if it was in the Orville mode. I'm just saying.
Amy and Haley could not be with us tonight, but they give us our best, and they will return next time. Quick reminder, guys, for a previous programming we've had here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and specifically the Union Federation. We, of course, recently last year, we did a wonderful limited series on every Star Trek Next Generation 2-part episode. We also did a limited series on the main crew members of the USS Orville. And also we discussed an episode talking about all of the Star Trek alumni worked in front of the camera and behind the camera. So make sure you check that out. Other specials we did here was on Section 31, Lower Deck season, and the final season 5. The last season of Star Trek Strange New World season 3. But right now we are discussing the Q Fan Collective, and we got episodes already in the can, and we got more coming up. This 12-episode limited series. More on that in a second. Shout out to my friend Joe Caroni here. He did a wonderful custom art piece here for Q, and I also have that here in my office right there. So make sure you check out joecrony.com there on the web. He's got some wonderful art. If you're a Star Wars fan too, he's got wonderful Star Wars art. So we were talking about the Q Fan Collective and this wonderful collection here that came out in 2007, holding up my physical copy right here. We're discussing all the episodes on that. It's all the Q episodes from TNG, the one from Deep Space Nine, and of course the 3 episodes from Voyager. And make sure you check out the first episode we did, Encounter at Farpoint, where we talked about the history of the Q. That was a fun discussion. And we also had a little fun with the Q hotline that still exists. Make sure you check that out. But let's go ahead and get into the first away mission. All right. First away mission we have here is the Star Trek Next Generation. And this is episode Deja Q. And I will go ahead and take over the Admiral's episode synopsis log. And Kyle, if you can go ahead and help us with the slideshow as I read along.
Absolutely.
All right, this is Deja Q, has an IMDb rating of 8.5 out of 10. This is season 3, episode 13, originally aired February 3rd, 1990. While trying to assist a planet threatened with collision by an asteroidal moon, a naked Q suddenly appears on the bridge. It seems that Q is being punished by the Continuum and he is selected to become a human on board the Enterprise. All of their instruments indicate that Q is in fact human, and he is not, as they had originally feared, responsible for the moon that is falling out of its orbit. Q begins to feel everything that the human does: hunger, pain, emotions. The ship is also being probed by an outside force that seems to have a complaint against Q, who now expects his fellow humans to protect him. In the end, Q realizes there's only one solution for him. Q takes a shuttle and goes to surrender to the Calamarain. Picard tries to save him, but all of his instruments are frozen. Since this is a selfless act, the Q is visited by a fellow Q, known as Q2, who is impressed with Q1 and how the humans are still trying to save Q1 after all he has done to, and how Q1 decided to sacrifice himself to save the Enterprise. Q's powers are restored by Q2. Q makes the Calamarian vanish. Q expresses everlasting gratitude to Picard and gives Data the gift of laugh before he leaves. The moon is back in orbit. So great moments there. Great moments there. We'll get into that in a moment here, of course. But first and foremost, guys, let's go ahead and get into some Star Trek trivia. Kyle, you want to hit us up with the first one there?
Absolutely. After several unsuccessful attempts by director Les Landau to film Q's nude scene without forcing the actor to actually be naked, a frustrated John de Lancie finally asked anyone offended by nudity to leave, strip down, and film the scene in one take. I tried to do that. I really did try to do that at the beginning of the show, guys. I'm sorry. They're just the censors. Like, I can't get past them.
All right. I love how stuff ties in, especially when it's timely here. Here's the next bit of trivia here, and I love this. John de Lancie's favorite episode appearance is Q, according to him. He reportedly said that he had a legitimate fun on the set. It was also his last appearance before the release of the movie Taking Care of Business, 1990, where he appeared with Star Trek Next Generation co-star Gates McFadden, a.k.a. Dr. Beverly Crusher. And how I said this is very timely, guys, I'll explain right now, is that... if you're watching the video right here, I'm actually holding up the movie called Taking Care of Business, guys. I don't know if you can see this here, but we actually covered this, Kyle, recently on our current Time Warp podcast that we're doing for 1990. Our Time Warp podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network discusses an entire year of movies. And we are celebrating the year of 1990 because all of the movies in 1990 are 35 years old, and this was one of them that we discussed. And I know we've been going back and forth, Robert. Another famous movie came out in 1990 that we adore, and that's the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. So we've been going back and forth on this. And if you haven't seen this movie, it's really fun. I didn't know this movie existed until like a couple of years ago, because John Belushi also came out with Mr. Destiny, the What If baseball game movie. And just to give you an idea of what this plot is for Taking Care of Business, James Belushi is Jimmy Dworsky, a happy-go-lucky convict who breaks out of prison and finally gets a life, somebody else's. When Dworsky finds the Daily Planner book that literally runs the life of ultra-organized executive Spencer Barnes, played by Charles Grodin,
Of course.
all hell breaks loose. With newfound cash, credit cards, and keys to the Malibu mansion, the imposter Dworsky embarks on an all-expense paid trip to Easy Street while posing as the high-powered Barnes. Meanwhile, Spencer's life is turned upside down as he hunts through the jungles of Los Angeles for his beloved book. When these oddball opposites finally meet, it's a comedic collision you won't forget. Kyle, I know you like this movie. It's a fun movie at heart, and it's got heart, and it's a lot of fun. I suggest you checked it out. And
those are the best kind.
Well, Kevin, I just want to say it's a superb job of crossing the streams and cross promotion.
I know, right? Yeah.
Hey, you want me to let me add a third layer. Charles Grodin in Clifford in the 90s with Martin Short.
Yeah. Charles Grodin was on a run there. So was James Belushi. He was great.
I mean, in the subgenre of identity theft movies, that's probably right up there.
It's great.
Buddy, or was it called K9? He did a buddy cop movie with a dog.
Yes, K9. Yep,
K9, right.
Now, Kyle, if you're watching the video, Kyle is face palming right now. Kyle, I'm gonna need you to read the next bit of trivia of why you're face palming. Okay.
I think I can explain that. This is the episode that contains the famous Picard facepalm scene, which became an internet meme and is still one of the best internet memes of all right now.
That's a solid face palm right there.
Yeah,
There's so much. It's just perfect.
The internet loves the facepalm.
Oh yeah.
All right, our final piece of trivia here is the final scene when Q appears on the bridge with the mariachi band to celebrate his restored powers required numerous takes to get the final result. John de Lancie's acting was so over the top it caused many of the cast and crew to burst out laughing. So finally, the director Les Lando used wide camera angles with the actors' backs turned to the cameras for the first half of the scene. In fact, during the take that made it on air, Michael Dorn can clearly be seen putting his head down to hide his face because he could not hold his laughter back. If you watch this scene too, you can tell that there was more than one take, because if you look at Marina Sirtis in this picture, she is loud, she's smiling, and she's looking over at Michael Dorn, seeing like how bad he's laughing right there.
I mean, come on. You always win with a mariachi band unless Antonio Banderas is a member of the band. Then we might have problems.
It's true. Do you guys have any comments on the trivia?
The best part of this scene is watching Picard's face during it.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, and Frakes is clearly just about to burst any second. The one thing that I noticed for just the first time rewatch last night, I did not know that Geordi had a cigar too. He's back there holding a cigar. I thought that's the first time I ever saw it. Maybe because it's on Blu-ray that Geordi had a cigar.
Kyle.
I'm thinking whenever they had a Q episode, they probably had to allocate a couple extra days of filming because they had to stop and do so many retakes because of laughter on the set.
Right. True. Very, very true. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into our next bit of trivia here. Well, not trivia. Let's get into our mission report here, because usually our first one covers, the episode, but I got another little kind of twist on this. All right, so this is Deja Q episode here. And our first away mission and mission report is we're going to have a little fun before we do the mission report. We're actually going to do what Amy kind of gave us me an idea. She said that she couldn't make it tonight, but she said something about how there were so many great Q quotes. So this is going to maybe be a new addition to the rest of this podcast, these limited podcasts that we're doing is the Q quotes or Q tips. See what I did there? So before I show you the list that I have, because they might be on your list here, I'm going to start with you, our special guest ambassadors here. And Gary, I'm going to start with you. What was one of your favorite Q quotes or Q tips from this episode?
It's probably my favorite Q quote so far in this miniseries that we're doing. And I actually may put it on a t-shirt. It's difficult to work in a group when you're omnipotent.
Oh man,
I'm seriously thinking of putting that on a shirt.
That's a good one. Robert, do you have any favorite Q quotes or Q tips from this episode?
Eat any good books lately?
When he's talking to Worf, right?
My second favorite thing from watching Picard's face when Q is being Q is his back and forth with Worf. And in this one, Worf, he wants to squeeze his eyeballs out of his head so bad.
It's funny that quote that you just said was actually number 1 on the quotes list on IMDb. So I thought that was good.
It's a great piece of writing. It's really good.
Kyle, you have a list there for us. Pop one off for me here that you want to talk about.
I'm going to pop off my favorite one of this episode. Riker, I don't need your fantasy woman. Q, oh, you're so stolid. You weren't like that before the beard.
Yes.
So I have a question for you. There was one thing that he said, and it didn't really hit home with me until I was going over the quotes, is when he goes to, Dr. Crusher, I see Starfleet has shipped you back to exile. And I thought that was funny because I think that's an inside joke because her character was not in season 2.
Right.
We had the other doctor. She returns in season 3. So I thought that was very, very funny.
There's a little quote too. I love it when Guinan comes in and he's looking. Picard won't have me as a member of the crew, but he'll have this dangerous thing. Yeah.
I love that when he's being detained in the cell of the Enterprise brig, and Q attempts to keep Captain Picard from leaving, and he goes, "Jean-Luc, wait!" And he runs into the force field. He goes, "This is getting on my nerves now that I have them."
Yeah. I also love when he looks at Data in 10 Forward and he says, I just think it's it's not funny. It's just a kind of adorable moment. And he says, "How do I know what I want?"
Yeah.
And I go, that's a great question. I'm a human and I don't even know how to answer that 9 times out of 10.
The one that always makes me laugh, and it made me laugh out loud again, is where Q goes, "I've been entirely preoccupied by the most frightening experience of my own. A couple hours ago, I realized that my body was no longer functioning properly. I felt weak. I could no longer stand. The life was oozing out of me. I lost consciousness." And Picard goes, "You fell asleep."
And do you notice that Picard lets his guard down for a second with that line? It almost looks that way. He's like, "You fell asleep." And then he kind of catches himself like, no, I'm not going to feel for this man.
Yeah, I feel like the one quote, though, that kind of just sums up everything. And it said, Q goes, "What are you looking at?" And goes to Data. And Data says, "I was considering the possibility that you are telling the truth, that you are really human." Q says, "It's the ghastly truth, Mr. Data. I can now stub my toe with the best of them." Yes. Then Data says, "An irony. It means that you have achieved in disgrace what I've always inspired to be."
Yeah.
Great line.
One of the best lines in the episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to close out by saying, these aren't my colors.
All right, guys, let's get into the first main mission report here. And I want to ask you guys, Robert, let's start with you here.
Yeah.
Is your thoughts on returning to this episode, and was there some subplots that stood out for you in Deja Q?
Well, revisiting this episode, I mean, it's a lot like revisiting all of these episodes that were on in the late 80s, early 90s, especially because this was my real introduction to Trek. I had seen the old Trek in syndication, bits and pieces here, but I was there for the ground floor. So that's what they've all been like so far. It's kind of like, wow. I remember this being fresh and being excited every time it came on TV, and the entire family sitting in the living room, and me sitting, Becky, my sister, sitting on the carpet, my parents back there on the couch with the TV trays, and we're watching Star Trek while we eat dinner. It was like a tradition. So this has been very, I'm not going to go say it's been like heavily emotional, but there's a little bit of that nostalgia in it for me. So
those are great memories right there. I love hearing stuff like that.
I mean, it's warm because you remember it's family. It's when stuff you're my sister's 8, I'm 10, it's that time. So I would say my favorite subplot of this entire episode is when Data takes over chaperoning Q. I mean, that like I said in my notes, Data is the perfect chaperone for Q, because Q is in this like dealing with his humanity, like as a 5-year-old, why? And Data is happy to answer all those questions. Like, no problem. I'll sit here and 10 forward with you. That's what I kept thinking during that scene is like, yeah, Data's going to go all night. He'll answer all your questions. No problem. And he's answering them without irony. That's what's so sweet about Data is he has that tinge of humanity to him. So his answers aren't dry like a robot, because he's an android. He's not a robot, but he's got this childlike quality to himself that matched very well with Q grappling with that aspect of his humanity. So
that's a good point. And there was the scene that where Data mentions to Captain Picard that Q has actually been helpful. He's helped Geordi with the stuff that's going on with the moon. And Troy goes, Q, you have an advocate. And then Data is just like, no, I'm just telling the truth or something like that. So I thought that was
But
cool.
I couldn't help, and this might be me projecting. Fair enough. I might be projecting onto this. But I just feel like Data's, to me, Data is this really pure soul. You know, ironically enough, he doesn't have one, but there's a line in this that I think really drives home how much better Data is at being human than the rest of us. When Q says, for whatever it's worth, you're a better human than I ever was.
Yeah.
That's a great line.
It's like
Yeah.
Data. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you know, you know. You know, it's
Yeah.
like if you
Well
watch
said.
Data's journey from the first episode all the way out, he has perhaps one of the most complex and interesting character arcs in all of Star Trek.
You could say in all of sci-fi as well. That's a good call out. Gary, what about you? What was it like returning to this episode, and was there any subplots that stood out for you?
Well, it was really interesting in that this is, at its core, this is a comedy episode. And it strikes me that this is only the third time we've seen Q since the pilot. And it's hard to believe that, you know, we were sitting there like rewatching the pilot, that like 3 appearances in, they feel confident enough to basically cast Q in a comedy, which is interesting how the show has evolved already to that point. I may be mistaken, please correct me if I am, but this is the first time that he continually refers to the captain as Jean-Luc. I mean, like all the time, not where he's like seeing Picard as like an example of humanity, but on a first name basis where there's that. At least I felt that there was more from Q's point of view. There seemed more of a closeness and intimacy with Picard because he keeps calling him Jean-Luc, 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 like a friend.
Right.
And you think, well, in Q's mind, does he consider Picard, not that he'd ever say that, Picard a friend, but I thought they're kind of easing back on the whole, you know, I'm the omnipotent judge of humanity now. And they're trying to explore different colors of the character. I thought that to kind of piggyback on what Robert was saying, I do think that my favorite subplot would be the Data aspect, in that these are 2 characters who are basically struggling in their own way to discover what humanity is, you know, one because he doesn't want it and the other because that's like all he wants. And I thought, yeah, that was kind of a genius way to counterpoint. In the scene where Data is injured, and, you know, Q would never, you know, admit that he's grappling with feelings of like regret or remorse or whatever. And I think that when he says that to Data, where he says, you know, for what it's worth, that's probably the most magnanimous gesture that Q has ever made, because he knows probably how meaningful that would be to Data. And that was probably Q's way of showing remorse, you know, for what I mean, Q probably wouldn't even know what remorse was. That's an emotion that he, you know, but just a little interesting kind of shades if you kind of like look between the lines of, you know, what's actually said during the show.
Can I piggyback a question off of Gary's question about
Jean-Luc?
Please
Go for it.
Is this the first episode when Q puts on Picard's uniform at the end to antagonize him? Or has he done that before?
No, he's been on there before.
With the captain's 4 dots and the red and everything?
Yeah, I believe he did it in the last. Yeah, he did it in the last episode.
I just remember that at the very end when he snaps and he's in Picard, I call it Picard's uniform, right?
Yeah,
he has this wry smile of like glee, like I'm gonna go on the bridge in this, and he's gonna hate it.
Yeah, he started doing that definitely in the last one that we did. So yeah. Kyle, what about you? What was your thoughts on returning to this episode after all these years, and what subplots stood out to you, sir?
Okay, well, I have to take control of the ship for a minute here, Kevin. So
go for it.
Bear with me because I have a bomb to drop. I think this is John de Lancie's best performance of Q of all the episodes he's been in.
Is that your hot topic bomb drop there, buddy?
Vomit from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. But John de Lancie is phenomenal in this episode because he's playing this just a god, basically, who's been turned human. But the humor he brings to it and having data to work off of. So you have this god who's been made human, and you have this character whose only desire is to feel human emotion, not necessarily become human, but to have that emotion. And when you have that dichotomy, that yin and yang of this episode, it just plays so incredibly well. And then the fact that even though he's human, we still see how his brain works as a Q. He's still thinking in a way as a Q. We figure it out. He goes to the Enterprise because he wants to be protected. He's still working all the angles as a Q, even though he's human and has all these new limitations and experience he has. And by the end of the episode, the fact that Q actually starts maybe understanding aspects of humanity, but how John de Lancie plays that with the aspect of, I'm not good at this, I don't like this, making a selfless act, even though he's still doing it in his own Q fashion. It is just an absolutely amazing performance by de Lancie as Q, and I think might be my favorite Q episode.
You just messed up how I look at Data, but I like it. Wait a second. I'm sorry, Gary or Kyle. I have to ask you this. So you see Data as more interested in the emotions than physically transform or being a human being. I'm really curious. What makes you think that?
Because
not in an argumentative way. I'm fascinated. I think
that's a great question.
Data's desire has always been not so much to have like the touch, but to feel those emotions. I mean, even when he gets his emotion chip and how he reacts to that. But Data always wanted to feel what everybody else felt. He wanted to felt like he understood what was going on. I don't think he cared if he was an android or human. He wanted those emotions so he could understand and feel from everybody else and share his own emotions.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Kyle. And great question, by the way, Robert. So I want to jump in here real quick on that, because one of the episodes that we learn about Data later, there's the Data's Day where he's helping everyone out. But then there's the one where he goes on the date with the girl and his instincts are not there at all. And she has to kind of paint by numbers of what he needs to do. And these are the type of the things that kind of like add to his character of what
there's the one where he makes a daughter for himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
the offspring.
That one is really
the one I think you're referring to, Kevin, is it called In Theory? Is that the
I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, it's where he's dating a girl. And I remember.
Michelle Scarabelli from
and there's little things of like when he receives the gift from her of flowers, like where he puts it in the room. Like he doesn't put it in the center of the room right away. He's like he puts it off to the side. He doesn't get that stuff. So yeah, that's a great topic.
The gut punch of that episode is when Data's standing there and he's like, "So I can delete the program." And then she says yes, and she leaves, and he just does it, and then he goes, it's like,
Gary.
One last quick thing that I thought that was a really interesting aspect that they paid lip service to that I wish they'd spent a little bit more time on, but as I think about it, I thought maybe that would have not been accounted to kind of the tone of the episode they were going for, is when Troy says she sensed that he's terrified.
Yeah.
And you can see that de Lancie plays that a little bit, while he's being snarky. Q covers it by being snarky. But the fact that Q's primary emotion that Troy senses out of this is his terror at the situation. That would have been fascinating for them to kind of expand on, but it would have kind of, like I said, it would have gone counter to more the lighthearted kind of comedic elements they were going for. But I thought that was a really interesting aspect of what would it be like for Q to be put in a situation where he himself feels terror.
Ooh, Gary, you're talking about like a multi-episode arc of Q where he's human.
I just thought it was an interesting thing. Cool. They had Troy note it, but beyond that, they didn't really. They kind of kept moving forward.
Right.
This subplot that I really liked was the return of the the Q/Guinan thing that we had going on. And Guinan had to prove to everyone
stabbed him
in the hand with a space fork. It was great. And it got me wondering, because you actually inspired me to do something, Robert. When I moved back out to California, I packed up a lot of stuff that I had gotten from my Decipher days. For those of you that don't know, one of my greatest parts of fandom that I'm always forever grateful for is I worked for Decipher Inc. out of Virginia for about 6 years. And I was a volunteer with them earlier in the 90s, and they produced the Star Wars, Star Trek, and Lord of the Rings card games. And I got hired by them. It was so much fun. And so, and we went to a lot of conventions, and I remember even in my off time, I would spend a lot of time in conventions, lines, getting autographs. And of course I would get cards signed because they didn't take up as much space as like pictures and stuff like that. And, but they're all packed away, but I'm like, I got to find some of these cards. And I had to showcase this one here. This was a foil version of the Q Dilemma card that I got signed by John de Lancie.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of hard to look at it, but
I love how it's all sealed up nice. Like
nice.
Yes.
Like from a nuclear blast. It looks great.
If you go to Michael's, they have these card sets where you can showcase a bunch of cards. And one of them that I have that I really love is this one right here. It has the entire bridge crew TNG's bridge crew signed. And if you'll notice,
dude,
right there is Guinan. I got a Guinan card signer right there.
You got Whoopi Goldberg's signature?
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine who went to a convention for me where she was signing, and she's done a lot more, and got the card signed for me. But
nice.
This is in case the house is burning, I got to take this set here. Yes. It's also got a Darth Vader card signed by James Earl Jones and David Prowse. So there you
Haven't we all like daydreamed, if the house were on fire, these are like the collectibles I would just chuck in a bag real fast.
Yeah, that one's going with me right there. So. But I just wanted to tease because the card game's going to come up a little bit later for a very good reason. We'll get into that later. So. But let's get into the next mission report here, guys. And this is, of course, your thoughts on the main Q storyline throughout this episode and its impact on the Star Trek timeline. More specific to this episode, not only does Q lose his powers and tries to sacrifice himself for the crew, another Q, otherwise known as Q2, is introduced. This is like the first time we really get to see another Q from the Q Continuum, and it's played by Corbin Burnson as a member of the Q Continuum. And he went uncredited at the time, which I thought was great. But Robert, let's go to you. What is your thoughts on the main Q storyline here?
So what I love about this is my favorite so far, I'll also say, for this reason. I love sci-fi when it talks about, this is why I love Blade Runner so much. It's like my favorite movie of all time, is because it's the idea, it's the question to the viewer of what is it to have a soul? What is it to be a man, have a soul, to be human, however you want to word it. And I know everyone here has seen Blade Runner, and I'm sure everyone watching has seen Blade Runner. So you know what I mean. And this episode, very creatively, and to an earlier point, the writing and the way that this was portrayed, John de Lancie's performance specifically, they just did a brilliant job of confronting the audience with this question through the dialogue of Data and Q. That's my take.
Nice. Well said. All right. Gary, what about you? What is your thoughts on the main Q storyline? He loses his powers and we are introduced to a new Q.
Yeah, we can. I mean, as a log line of an episode, it almost kind of writes itself. Q loses his powers and becomes human. Go. And then you're just kind of off. I mean, that could go a million different directions. I actually really appreciate the fact that they left it very ambiguous whether Q actually was sacrificing himself for the ship. Because you could also see that he plays that he really would rather I mean, he slushed it off later by saying, as a human, I would have died of boredom. But they keep it ambiguous whether he just really would rather be non-existent rather than be stuck as a human. It's only when Q2 comes on the shuttle and starts tossing out this concept of, well, were you sacrificing yourself for the ship? And Q gets this gleeful look like, hey, that's my out, and he goes, yes, I guess I did, didn't I? So they didn't really go one way or the other, which I think is best. It's like, was Q just taking advantage of something that Q2 said and went with the whole, yeah, if this will get me out of this, yeah, I was going to sacrifice myself for the ship? Or was he just so despairing that he would rather, be killed by the Calamarain rather than just go on existing? I also like the fact that, his only real, emotion of gratitude at the end with what happens with Data, that I think was legitimate because he didn't have to do that. And I think that he, was grateful to Data. I also think that it's very interesting that the second that he gets his powers back, he turns back to the malevolent Q. He snaps his Calamarain, if you think what I did to you before, you haven't seen nothing yet. His first instinct when he becomes a Q again is to torture and be the dark god, and I think that's very revealing.
Well said.
Yeah, Gary, even the way he dismisses them, it's even rude.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Wow.
Kyle, what is your thoughts on the main Q storyline here, including getting introduced to another Q?
As far as everything with Q, I think one of the most interesting things of character and how the crew sees him, how much they play up the boy who cries wolf in this. How they just absolutely refuse to believe.
You mean cries Worf?
Yeah, that too. But yeah, I think they just absolutely refuse to believe that he's human. Even though scans and everything, they just don't trust it. And I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of this episode. But guys, I'm going to call it out. One of the greatest missed moments in Star Trek history. Corbin Burnson should have shown up in a Cleveland Indians uniform.
Major league crossover there. I like that.
That's right.
This podcast has had so many great crossover references, just all over the place. I got to call that out.
You know what, Kyle? They could have even had Corbin Burnson say, Q, you made a major league mistake by doing something like that.
Yeah, I know, right? Here you go.
Or he could even show it up looking like an attorney.
There you go.
God,
Get
there's
the little
so
LA Law crossover going.
So many good Q moments. You guys have brought them up here. I'm just going to say the moments with Data. I think, and you alluded to this earlier, Robert. I just think that Data was great in this role as being, and I knew that Picard would know that Data would be the person to do this. And, that wasn't by accident. I don't think he was punishing Data because he knew, he knows Data. And I just feel that, I think in a way, Picard knew that if Q would learn anything, he would learn it from Data, because Data has that kind of impartial, has that type of way of not having to talk down in a way or give an order or anything like that. And and I feel that was like the perfect person to bring some type of humility, if any, to Q. So that was
I actually do have to say that my second favorite Q moment is when he goes into engineering. All right, everybody, I'm here. Here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
that was perfect.
Who does he think he is?
Well, speaking of,
what does he say to Geordi? Just change the something of the universe.
The
gravity flow of the universe
constant
along those lines.
Well, you brought us into the next mission report here, which is number 3. What is your best or most memorable Q moment here? Is there a scene or character moment that best stands out to you in this episode? And Gary, I'm going to go back to you on this one. You brought up a good one. We were first introduced to Q naked in this one. We get some moments, of course, with Beverly and the mariachi band, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, with Guinan. What else drops? What else is a your favorite Q scene in this episode?
I think honestly, it has to be the scene with Guinan.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't have to, call sickbay after that, because I thought, okay, if he gets stabbed like that, I'm surprised, first of all, that his hand wasn't like stuck to the actual bar with the force that she knifed his hand. But and again, it didn't have, it was the right tone. It wasn't the whole. It didn't have the same tone as the previous episode where it's like where they were encountering each other for the first time. She's there gloating, superior to him. He's probably wants to run and hide, but it's just the tone of that scene. It's kind of like playful, but there's a history, there's an animosity there, and that had to be it.
What about you, Robert? What is your favorite Q moment?
Okay, clarifying question. Favorite or, in my opinion, favorite or best Q moment?
Either one.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go favorite, then I'm going to go with the mariachi band.
Good one.
Especially when he's got the trumpet vertically up in the air, like one-handed, and he's sauntering down the path, and you can see Picard is about to explode in anger. That is beautiful.
Also, the look on the actual mariachi band itself, they're like, what kind of gig is this?
They're loving it. But they were killing it. It was great.
Robert, what about you? Or Kyle, sorry. What about you? What's your favorite Q moment?
I think it's got to be the Guinan scene. That whole scene in 10 Forward is just great because it really deals with the humanity. But we start seeing the fallout of what Q being human is now. But I want to say this because there should have been a moment in this episode that they didn't really have. There should have been a moment between Riker and Q. Now that Q was human, and Riker can look at him and like go, see, this is what it's like after what Riker with Q making Riker a Q.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think that was a moment they missed in this episode.
That is an excellent point where you get the flip side of things, right? Q in the second episode of this series gives Riker Q powers, and now things are kind of switched. Now that would be interesting. Yeah, maybe you could give him some like ladies' man tips or something like that.
I just think that was a moment that was missed. I mean, otherwise, fantastic. This is such a great episode, but yeah, that was something that always stuck out to me on this one.
That's a good point there. Yeah, I love the scene in 10 Forward, not just with the Guinan thing, but I love how Data. I think the best Q moment is when he says, "I'll have 10 chocolate sundaes."
10 chocolates.
It's so bad that we didn't get to actually see Q try a chocolate sundae to see what he thought.
I know. It's just they kind of left it out there,
I love Data's reaction to him saying, "I want 10 chocolate sundaes." It's like, no one's ever eaten 10.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff.
That's absurd.
Okay. So the next mission report, this is our general discussion here. This is if you have any other comments or topics or observations in this episode that you'd like to share that we haven't touched on. But I do want to get us kicked off here with one thing. Gary, we'll come to you after this. I want to talk about the Data laughing part here on this one because this is the going away gift that Q decides to give Data. And I like how he clarifies, because Data's like, you're not going to make me human. He's like, no, I wouldn't do that to you. And he gives him the gift of laughter, and I love that we get this happening, especially when we see when Data gets his eventual emotion chip in Star Trek. Was it Generation? No.
Yeah. Generations.
Yeah. And we see where that goes from there, and so on. And I think that's a wonderful moment there that we get to see. And when I'm going to take at it from a completely different angle before I get your guys' take on the Data laughing scene. As I mentioned, I used to work for Decipher, and first game that they ever released was Star Trek. And the first set that they ever released was Star Trek: The Next Generation. They went on to, of course, do Deep Space Nine and cover the other parts of Star Trek, that were available to them at the time. The original series, of course, and Deep Space Nine, Voyager, blah, blah, blah. But they settled on, of course, Next Generation, because when this game came out in 94, TNG was like huge and was also getting ready to wrap up as well. Well, what they did was they released this book. I'm going to showcase it here. The official player's guide to the Star Trek The Next Generational customizable card game. Get this free limited edition black border card mail-in offer. And what that mail-in offer was, a Data laughing card that was playable in the game, and you would get it in this little cellophane packet. And it was the first promo card that was released for this set. And I had to go digging through my binder, and what did I find, guys? I found still in its cellophane wrap the original Data laughing card. Check that out.
I love that it's an interrupt.
It is.
That's
yes, it
great.
is.
That's perfect.
It says on the card, when Lieutenant Commander Data rescued the temporarily immortal Q from the Calamarian in 2366, Q awarded him with the gift of laughter. And the game text says, nullifies Calamarian or doubles Data's head this turn, or retakes one ship controlled by Lore, returns so that Lore and the Rogue Borg now follow your direction. So that's where I like to come out with it. Obviously, it's a great scene, and it brings back so many nostalgic memories whenever I see this scene of this episode. And there's a great picture right there of Data laughing in this cellophane card, which is still sealed. Gary, I want to go to you on this scene here of Data's laughing. What did you think of that moment?
I've actually thought, I mean, it's funny in the moment, you know, because he's laughing, Picard's confused, Riker's laughing, Troy's kind of joyous and everything. Geordi is going, why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? It's like, well, because it was a Q gift. But I think it's very, I think it's very bittersweet when he like stops laughing and then the veil, it drops again and he's back to his self. It's like he's granted this one moment of something that, you know, he's always wanted, and then it's gone. Like to quote Matt Smith and Doctor Who, like breath on a mirror. It's there one instant and, you know, it has a finite life. So I actually think it's very bittersweet.
Awesome. Robert, your thoughts on the final scene of Data getting the gift of laughter by Q as a thank you?
Well, mine is very much in league with what Gary just said. So the thing that stood out to me immediately in that scene is that little transition at the end from that laughing to not laughing, then being asked, you know, what were you laughing about? It was the expression, the performance of Brent Spiner, really, of him answering and kind of grappling with that. I just experienced something I really, really want, but I have no idea why. And that kind of diminishes it because there's no connection to why for me. And I think in that moment, this is just my theory, he realized this is an evolution of Data that we're seeing, is my point. He's realizing that it's not enough to just have emotions. Emotions are attached to something with meaning. And if there's no meaning, then you're just a laughing idiot. And I think he had a little bit of like, I don't like that. That's not what I want.
Good point.
But it's an evolution of the character. Now he has leveled up and he's seeking his humanity with this more mature outlook. That's just my opinion.
That's good. It just made me think, like, after he laughs, he's just like, he's got that, like, oh, that's what he got like a taste of humanity for a second or a couple seconds there. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah. Kyle, your thoughts on the laughing Data moment there?
I think it's a great moment for everybody because we see Data finally have that emotion. But like the guy said, it's a little bit bittersweet because he loses it. But I think that's the impact of it, because he gets a taste. Because if all of a sudden just Data had emotion from the Q, I think it changes so much in Star Trek history. Yeah. And I don't think Data's journey is as impactful. But when he gets these little moments of emotion through episodes as it goes along, it just builds it. And it's kind of like when he finally gets the emotion chip, it's the ultimate payoff, and you're happy for him that he has this. But it's interesting to see him have some of these things for the first time and seeing him just laugh. And then, but the android thing of he had it and then it was gone, but he has no emotion of the feel of loss of it. And I think that makes it even more fascinating and even a more interesting gift from Q, because Data knows he had this, but he can't remember the feeling of it. And I think that's really, it's an interesting aspect to the Data character.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. All right, Gary, you had another thing, a discussion you wanted to bring.
Well, just a couple random points. First of all, I think this episode proves that William Riker is clinically insane to reject those two women that Q conjures up for him.
Well, you know, he's got the holodeck.
I was going,
you know,
Will, come on, buddy.
He's got Minuet. I mean, you know, he's good.
The biggest missed opportunity in this episode is that they did not have a reaction shot of Troy.
Yeah.
When those two women.
Well, it's like Q
Biggest
said, he was more
opportunity.
fun when he didn't have the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a more general question, and I thought of this during this scene. Here's my biggest question of the episode that I hope you guys can help me solve. What does that crewman who mans the brig do all day? I mean, does he do online poker? Does
Galaga?
he do Sudoku?
Galaga, yeah, it's Galaga. It's got to be Galaga.
Sudoku,
What I would play.
soap operas, Betazoid cooking channel. It's like, this guy's just sitting there watching the screen. I mean,
you could say the same
Maybe
thing for
Tetris.
you could say the same for Chief O'Brien when he's not in the transporter room. Like, what is he doing? You know?
Because it's like, until Worf brought Q in there, the guy was just sitting there looking at a screen. It's like, okay, there's got to be a story there behind what this guy's doing all day.
I would want to talk to him.
That's funny. That's good. Yeah.
I have so many questions for you, and I've got nothing to do but watch
I feel
you.
like there should be a range of outtakes of Q trying to talk to that guy.
Oh yes.
He's like, I was valedictorian at Starfleet Academy for this.
All right, guys. We've got
a
one
great
more
idea.
mission report here, guys. Let's go ahead and discuss our episode, I guess you could say, cast member or guest star MVP. Or if you're Amy, sometimes choose your least most valuable player here. Gary, let's start with you. Who in this episode is your cast or guest MVP on this?
Okay. Again, just like last week, I'm going to kind of think outside the box a little bit, only because this was so delightfully unexpected and became one of the all-time great next-gen moments. My MVP is the mariachi band. Maybe, mariachi valuable player. That's what they put the M in.
I see
most.
what you did there. That's good.
Because I just like, they just stand there playing. It's like, do they know, hey, we were, playing a wedding, and where are we now? It's like, I really truly believe, I think the closing credits of this episode should have had mariachi music instead of the regular closing credits theme. That would have been great.
But done with the Star Trek theme and mariachi.
Yes.
So, yeah,
there you go.
Good. Robert, who is your MVP of this episode?
Well, my MVP is Data.
Good one.
And we've touched on most of why that is. There's two lines that he delivers that really stood out to me. The one you already called out: achieved in disgrace what I have always aspired to be. That's just like the best line in the episode, if we're going for impact.
Yeah.
And then there's another line which I loved. I paused it to type this down, is when Q is being ridiculous in engineering when they're trying to solve this problem. And Q snaps at Geordi and says, who do you think you are to tell me anything? And Data says, Geordi thinks he is in command, and he is correct.
Yeah.
And the way he says it, it's like, boop. So
that's a good point.
Those two things really, those two lines in particular stood out to me, but all the other stuff that we talked about with regard to Data, I just think he is the MVP.
Before you get to yours, Kyle, here, I just want to let people know if you're watching this live, please jump in the chat. Let us know what you think. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, join us live Monday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific throughout the rest of this limited series. Please join us live in the chat and share us out. We'd appreciate that. Kyle, what is your MVP for this episode?
I got to agree with Robert. It's Data. He is so important to this episode. But I have a secondary under the radar MVP, and that is Worf, because his scenes with Q, especially when he's escorting him to a security, are great. And I love that scene where he goes, Romulan, and Worf just kind of stops for just that 1 second.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Mine's kind of obvious, I guess, in this one because it's kind of big too. And it also affects kind of the rest of the timeline with Star Trek because we're introduced to new Qs. And I want to give a shout out to Mr. Corbin Burnson here. Here I am right there at the top left-hand corner, as introduced as a new Q here. And as we learn from future episodes of Q episodes, we are introduced to new Qs of the Q continuum. I thought he was great in this. He was funny. I like the fact that he says, I was kind of the one that kicked you out, and then he was able to give Q the power. So it kind of brings up the question of like, is there a hierarchy in the Q with even bigger powers to where you can actually take Q powers away from fellow Q members without them doing it to you? So I'm kind of wondering where and what happens with that. It brings up that question, and then later on, we learn about another Q member, which we'll get into in a future episode. And then Q in Voyager procreates, and we'll learn about that when we get to that. And Guinan was just great in this as well. She comes in and steals everything as well. So there you go.
To your point about Corbin Burnson, I think it'd be funny. I'd like to see like the Q version of People's Court, like when Q's on one side, Q2's on the other. Here's why you should take away his powers because he did this and this and this, and his all this spiteful backbiting among the Q. I'd actually like to see that.
That's a good point. Well, guys, let's go ahead and let's wrap things up here. Let's get in some subspace signals and final thoughts. All right, guys, this is, of course, Union Federation Podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. We are discussing the Star Trek Q fan collective of episodes released on DVD that cover all of the Star Trek Q episodes from TNG through Deep Space Nine and Voyager from 1987 to 2001, a 12-episode limited podcast series here. Want to get your guys' final thoughts on this episode, and also let us know how we can reach you as well. Gary, let's start with you. What are your final thoughts on this episode?
I think this episode shows how versatile the character of Q is for the writers. They can put him in a deadly serious episode, like the last one we did, Q Who. They could play up the more kind of comic aspects of it. They can play up, that he's like the Loki character, like the mischief maker, but yet none of it takes away from. But it all fits. We don't think, well, our Q wouldn't do this. They can find all these different colors of the character, and yet it all works. De Lancie makes whatever they give him work, which is a credit to him and the credit to the character. And I just think that this is a great sign. We're going to see a lot more kind of like lighter moments of Q, but this is a great sign that Q is just like the one of the characters that keeps on giving in this series, which I think is great. You can find me on X at Gary_A_retro. I'm on Facebook as Gary Akers, Discord as Retrodoc, and you can find me also on Thursdays on the FPN's Type 40, covering Doctor Who, on Saturday on FPN's Spacebook, covering everything else, and hope to see you all there.
Awesome. Robert, what are your final thoughts on this episode, and how can we find you? Oh, you're on mute, by the way, dude.
Thank you. I have more of a, I guess, a hot take, less of a final thought. when Picard had this line that caught me, and I wrote this down. I sent you my notes, Kevin. But he says there is no dignity in this kind of death when Q is out on the shuttle, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. If it is a genuine act, there's a ton of dignity in that, and because I'm thinking of Wrath of Khan, what Spock did.
Mm.
And then we see the inverse, of course, of that. So brilliantly done in Search for Spock. But I just thought I disagreed with Picard. I was like, no. I mean, if I'm allowed to disagree with Jean-Luc Picard, I disagree with him. You can find me on Discord at Bald Solo, all one word.
Awesome. All right, Kyle, give me your final thoughts, buddy. How can I reach you?
I think this is one of the most fun and complete episodes of TNG ever. I think this has a bit of everything in it. You've got the comedy, you've got the great storyline with Q becoming human, you've got some very powerful moments with Data, you've got the laughter scene, and of course, one of the greatest moments in Star Trek history with the mariachi band. I think this is one of those TNG episodes that kind of goes down in history, and maybe you show it to somebody who's diving into TNG for the first time, so they can see how much fun TNG is too. But it's a great performance by de Lancie. Like I said, I think it's, in my personal opinion, it might be his best performance as Q. And I think this is one of these, like I said, I put this in my top 10 of TNG episodes. I think it's that good, that well done, and also that important. But as far as finding me, well, when I'm not hanging around in the Q continuum, stupid censor's taking my powers, but you can find me on Twitter at AKyleW. You can find me on Blue Sky at AKyleW. You can find me on Facebook, all over the Fandom Podcast Network pages. Just look for Kyle Wagner. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom.
Awesome. Before I give my thoughts here, I'll just say join our Union Federation podcast Facebook group, talking all things Star Trek and, of course, the Orville there. You can find Union Federation on Instagram, also on Twitter as well, on X, so make sure you check that out. My name is Kevin. You can find me at Spartan_Phoenix on all of the socials, including Discord, X, and Instagram, and Spartan Phoenix at Blue Sky. Did want to give a quick little reminder of what we have coming up next, guys. The Star Trek Q episodes fun continues, and we are discussing one of my favorites. Cupid came out in 1991. That'll be the next Union Federation podcast. Make sure you guys check that out. This is the Union Federation podcast on Fandom Podcast Network and BQN. And also give us a shout out on TeePublic. You can buy this cool Union Federation t-shirt that I have here. And you can get all logos from all of our shops there. We'd appreciate your support and help there. I absolutely love this episode. It is so funny. You guys have made some great points about this. It is, I think, John de Lancie's best performance as Q, really, because, you know, when you look at a lot of the other episodes, he's kind of around and he's kind of either guiding or popping in during the episode doing shenanigans. But this time he's kind of the star in this, you know, because his powers have been taken away, and that's such a huge thing. And I really feel that this is the episode that really makes Q more connected to the Enterprise, but more importantly to Picard and Data as well. But we get a lot of tease to how attached he is to Picard. And in the next episode, he really wants to help Picard. Not necessarily the way Picard wants, but in more of a very entertaining way for all of us to see. So, yeah.
We will not be merry men on the next podcast.
Oh,
this is true. We got a fun one next week. Anyway, yeah, guys, if you're listening to this or watching this, please join us live on Monday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Join our chat. Let us know what you think. And yeah, give us a share, give us a like. Please subscribe to the to the Fandom Podcast Network to get notifications for upcoming episodes. We'd appreciate that. And let us know what you think too. It's been a fun series, and we got a lot more to get to. I want to thank my guests, of course, our ambassadors. Robert, thank you. Gary, thank you very, very much. And, of course, my co-founder there, the Fandom Podcast Network, Kyle. Thank you guys so much. Kyle, you're trying to snap us out of this, so I guess
it's not working. Why is it not working, Kevin?
It's got a good beat.
What have you done to me, Kevin?
It's got a good beat. I like that. Well, until next time here on the Union Federation podcast, as we always say, live long and prosper. And without a doubt, we are the weirdest ship in the fleet. We'll see you guys next Monday night. Join us live. See you next time.